Hi everyone, my name is afuabayayi and welcome to the Team Bayayi YouTube channel. We are parenting, homeschooling, working and churching. So to kickstart our series, we're going to be sharing with you some Instagram lives that we did with some homeschooling mums that I have a lot of respect for. Homeschooling mums that I've learned so much from and who have inspired me on my journey. First live is with Yeboah, who is a mum of 5 children. She has 4 boys and a girl in that order, ranging from 7 to 22. Her eldest was public school educated and the other 3 boys were removed from school to be homeschooled about 4 to 5 years ago. Her youngest has always been homeschooled. So her understanding of education and the different approaches to education is extremely varied. She shared so many nuggets and such wisdom, not just with regards to homeschooling, but parenting. So grab a cuppa, kick back, enjoy. Follow us on Instagram. We are Team Bayayi there as well. And I know that you're going to enjoy it. I certainly did. This is the first live that we're doing on Team Bayayi, and the reason why I wanted to do this series on homeschooling is because homeschooling is something I'm super passionate about it, and I genuinely feel like I'm in a privileged position to homeschool. And I feel like more people kind of need to know about just the benefits and the advantages of homeschooling. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to invite a lot of other homeschooling mums in my network to come and share their experiences and their perspectives. So I've always been passionate about education. Prior to me going into business full time, I actually was a teacher. So I've always loved teaching and learning. It's always been something that I'm on it. And but I always also knew that I wanted to homeschool my children. So I made the decision even before having children. And this is after doing research. This is after, really kind of understanding what homeschooling was. I went into it fully prepared, totally prepared for what it entailed. And hi Lino, hi Han. So I went into it fully prepared for what it entailed, in terms of the sacrifice that it was going to be and that type of thing. I did a lot of research into it, and there were a lot of surprises along the way. It definitely has its challenges, but it's so rewarding and it's just so beneficial, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing thing. I think children really thrive from it, and I just wanted to kind of create a space where there would be an opportunity to hear from different experiences about homeschooling, because I think there are lots of misconceptions. I have one of my friends, she straight up tells me, you are weird. Anyone that wants to do this is weird. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. So hopefully this is going to this series is going to really kind of shed some light and open up people's minds to options that are out there when it comes to educating your children. And so I've invited a lovely lady called Liz. She's extremely inspiring as a wife and as a mother. And before I actually came to know her personally, I heard about her. So her reputation goes before her. So I heard people tell me about her and about her children, about how impressive her sons were and just how inspiring they were as a family. And that was prior to me actually getting to know her. And so I've invited her to be the first person to join me for the live. So I know that you're there, Liz. Liz, if you could give me a wave.
Hi! How are you? I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation. As I said, you are someone your reputation goes before you. I had a number of people were like, you need to meet this woman. So thank you for coming on.
You're too kind, Barbara.
Am I shaking? Okay, sorry. I'm shaking the table.
Oh, okay.
So what I wanted to do was first of all ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family, and so that we can get to know you a bit more, and then I'll dive into my questions.
Okay, so my husband and I are both from West Africa, Ghana.
Hey, come on.
We have 5 children. We have 4 boys and a little girl. Their ages are 22, 19, 14, 11, and our little girl is 7. And we started homeschooling officially 4 years ago, but Ellie's never really been homeschooled. But yeah, our eldest is 22. He graduated this year. So that was super exciting, even with all the COVID stuff going on. And Jacob is doing his A-levels, finishing that off to start his apprenticeship to become an accountant. So yeah.
Nice. And whereabouts are you guys based?
We're Milton Keynes.
Okay. So you're Milton Keynes. And how long have you been married?
Almost 25 years next year.
Guys, are you hearing this? 25 years. We are coming. That is hats off to you. So I love it. So what I wanted to know, first of all, was why homeschooling? What actually led you to this decision? Because you said 4 years ago, so your children were kind of in the mainstream, form of education up until then. So what led you to that decision?
Okay, so basically, I think we were heading in this direction anyway, and we just didn't know it. But God had other plans for us, and we're very thankful and grateful for those plans, because it's literally changed our lives. The kids were in fantastic schools. They loved their schools. I mean, amazing schools. They were thriving. So they had no problems there. So that's 2015. We went to a conference. It was a homeschooling conference. And wow, we heard a lot that day. And we met other homeschooling families, and we were just blown away. So we started asking questions, and they told us a lot. And we just said, we made the decision there. We're homeschooling. And then so my husband said, let's take out a year to detox our own mindsets, because I think as parents, we hinder the process. It's got nothing to do with the children. I think it's just we've gone through mainstream schooling, so our minds need to be detoxed. So it took us a year. He just said, let's do that before we take them out. And that's what we did. We took a year. We researched. We prayed. We really tried to understand what was just about to take place. Jacob, who was just about to start his GCSEs, but he hadn't, a few months before he started his GCSEs, we felt was the one that was gonna feel this transition the most. So Dad gave him within that year the power to tell us when we were gonna start. And so Jay was the one that was gonna give us the date. So that basically it would be us, whenever he was ready, then we would follow. So when you say that you went, what actually led you to the conference in the first place? What made you think, I'm going to go to this homeschooling conference? Why was that even an interest for you? No, it wasn't an interest. We just enjoyed the speaker, and we just turned up. And to be honest, we didn't even know it was going to be a homeschooling.
All right. Okay.
And when we turned up, there were so many lovely families and engaging with their children. And the way they were confident, and I mean,
hey, Tom Brown. Sorry.
So yeah, that just did it for us.
So when you say that was it the way that the families were, or was it what they had to say about mainstream education?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything started coming together. So everything that was being spoken about, having a Christ-centered household, Christ-centered education, coming from a biblical worldview, it was just tugging at our hearts. It was already seeds that had been sown within our parenting. And so it really began to resonate with us. And we were like, hold on. We can actually take charge of our children's education, and we can go forward with this, and we can press into all the different values we already had.
Yes.
And our eyes were just opened, because we realized that, well, number one, when I did my research that year, I found out that because I didn't know this, you see, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know the law as to the law in England anyway, pertaining to education. And I found out that we as parents have the right to choose.
Yeah.
That's what the Act says. We have the right to choose how our children are educated. I had no idea that it wasn't even a choice. I had assumed that as soon as they're of school age, we have to put them in. So as I began to educate myself, we realized that, no, we can do this. And we had a vision, and we started working towards that vision. So, yeah.
So in terms of the children, some of them being in school, and then being taken out, and you also having your eldest who'd gone through the whole mainstream education system, high upstart sport, high bliss nuptials, high chinyere, and thank you, Tombra. In terms of all of that, what are the differences that you would say that you've seen or that you've identified in terms of the education experience between homeschooling and being schooled, essentially?
Okay, so the biggest difference is the love of learning.
Okay.
For the younger three, as opposed to the older two, being that when they were at their age, the younger children's age, they didn't have this amount of passion and love, and their curiosity hadn't been stoked as much, and they weren't free to explore all their God-given talents as the younger ones have, with the opportunity of being at home. So the biggest one would be just the love of learning, their curiosity being satisfied, and having the opportunity to immerse them in different situations, environments, opening them up to the world, because that's what we did. That was one of the things we decided we were going to do, was include world schooling. We wanted them to be able to experience things that we would learn in geography, in history, in church history, and actually go there, be there. And I loved it when we could make those things happen, and they would just light up like, wow.
Because you're not confined by like school holidays, times, and that type of thing. You can just up and go. You can, right.
So the world became our school. And like everyone else, when we started, we did the traditional thing, and really it was like school at home, especially the first 6 to 8 months was school at home, and clearly that didn't work. We've even got a schoolroom. Things organically began to change, and now we don't really use the schoolroom. We use the dining table for a lot of things, or the front room, or the garden, or we go out. So it's changed, organically it began to change. And I think the children are the best thermometers, and if you follow their guidance, then you will find where they should and need to be.
And that's interesting, because there's this whole kind of argument about the language that we use. Hey, Hawa, there's this because you have homeschooling, which is the term that I use, but I've noticed your bio says home educator. And I've noticed that a few like homeschoolers are like, they prefer the term home educator. So is that what you mean in terms of you're not trying to recreate the school environment in terms of desk and chair and it kind of being very formal? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, don't read too much into the title.
Okay.
I think what has shaped us in our homeschooling would be the Charlotte Mason whole philosophy. I think that's what's helped to really, because once we started like pulling and drawing different things from that philosophy into our home, the children began to become alive. And I loved it, right? I loved all the poetry. I loved the short lessons. I loved like mother culture. I want to
yeah, because I was going to say, you're going to have to break down the Charlotte Mason, because a lot of people won't even know who Charlotte Mason is or what that approach is. So if you could break that down as much as you can. So talk about the web.
So this, because we could be here forever, right? Talking about all the different methods, because I'm not a purist when it comes to Charlotte Mason. She was an educator in the Victorian era, and she was based eventually in Ambleside, and she started this whole campaign and to reform, basically. I think that's what she did. She reformed education in Britain. But this book is what introduced me to Charlotte Mason, and I highly recommend it. Even if you're not drawn to the method and the approach, I would definitely recommend Suzanne Schaefer Macaulay's For the Children's Sake. That's one book. And the second one would be a newer one, which would be The Wild and Free by Aisley Ahmet.
I've heard of this book. It seems to be very popular, this book.
Oh, it's got everything in there. Like, these two books are the books I usually recommend to people thinking of homeschooling and new homeschoolers. But I often still go back to this one, often, because I think you just need to keep yourself constantly learning, refreshed, inspired. And I think everyone is so different. And even though I'm drawn to the Charlotte Mason method, I still have bits of classical, and I still have bits of my own things.
But let's go back to the Charlotte Mason method. So what is the Charlotte Mason method?
Okay, so she believes, she's got principles, right? And so she believes in like keeping children out in nature. Obviously there's people out there. Let me give you a person that would you need to follow if you're interested in the Charlotte Mason method.
I'll put the book titles in, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a podcast you can follow called Modern Miss Mason by Leah Bowden. She's also got a fantastic Facebook group called Charlotte Mason Conversations UK. And you'll find a lot of purists on there.
So when you say purists, you mean like the hardcore, like the diehard?
Yeah, they subscribe absolutely to her method, whereas I don't subscribe absolutely to her method, because of, I guess, the vision I have for where we're taking the children, and so I have to pull in other things that support that. Does that make sense?
It does.
I would say that I have a lot of mix. It's a bag. It's a mixture of different resources and curriculums and methods that I've drawn on, that I find that they will be conducive for these souls I have in my home. Does that make sense?
And that's one of the things that I love about homeschooling, is that you can literally create it. You can take bits and pieces from different schools of thoughts and approaches. You can look at a certain country's approach to education and take a bit from that, and do you know what I mean? And then mix and match it and create your own. So exactly. In terms of the Charlotte Mason principles, you're talking about spending a lot of time outdoors.
Yes, she does encourage that, which struck a nerve with me, because prior to reading Suzanne Schaefer's book, there were particular things, seeds that were already being sown. That's why when I found Charlotte Mason, I was like, oh my gosh, she's speaking my language, you know? And one was to be in nature. I love a healthy lifestyle. I love nutrition and things like that. And I had began to find out a fair few things about the importance of being in nature. And because I know that there's so much I would want to say, that's why I'm trying to put the books up. I'm like, I've got an hour. So this book would say everything we would need to talk about today, right? Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder by Richard Louv. Okay. Brilliant book if we want to really dig into the importance of nature and what's going on with it currently in our generation. And also, but what kickstarted it was almost a year and a half ago, when I went on a particular website and I found out that in Scotland, they were prescribing nature. The doctors in Scotland were now able to prescribe nature, right? And they were able to prescribe, and it was the first program of its kind because of its benefits. So if you went with blood pressure, anxiety, mental illness, stress, heart disease, they will prescribe nature. They even had a leaflet, which yours truly had to print. I didn't go to Scotland. I found this leaflet because I was like, what? So this is the leaflet they give. And for every month they have suggestions of things you should do in nature, which would relieve all your symptoms, because the studies had found that it worked and it alleviated all of these anxiety, high blood pressure. And I thought, hold on, we live in the northern part of the country. They're up in the south, and if I was to go to my doctor with any of these issues, I'll be given medication.
Yeah.
Right? And because they live in Scotland, based on the research that had come out, they're being prescribed to go outside and collect shells and walk with their bare feet and look at the sunset. And so I began to really look into this, and I realized that for the children's well-being, they needed to be out as often as possible, seeing landscapes, because the benefits of children, according to Richard Louv, is a general healthy child development. It helps with attention span, helps with cognitive functioning, stress reduction, self-confidence, creativity. And he said that we're hardwired to be in nature, to see a beautiful natural landscape. And when we don't get that, we don't do so good. Right? So there's a lot. There's a lot in
So when you say that you have the children outdoors, is this they're actually learning outdoors, or is it like you give a lot of their time in the day to say, be outdoors, like just go and like, how is it?
So life happens, right? So one thing about my life generally is nothing rules me. Let me put it this way. So I've lived long enough to know that you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible. So if it depends on the day, we have a large backyard so the kids can go out there. We've even got this tent that they can work out from. If the older ones have to take them out, we've also got a park here, because sometimes when you read all these wonderful books and you read everything even Charlotte Mason has to say about keeping them out 4 to 6 hours a day.
4 to 6 hours?
Okay. But what's interesting with that is, if you go and see an optician and you just ask them about your eyesight, they tend to even talk to you about trying to stay out often, because out in the outdoors as often as possible, because it can maintain the rate at which your prescription is at, so that it doesn't get any worse. Right? Yeah. So my optician was explaining that to me. So the benefits, it's huge. And for me, all I need to know is the why. For me to be able to do something, I need to understand it. I need to understand its benefits, and then I'll find a way. So if there are days that we can't go, find a piece of beautiful countryside half an hour away, an hour away, then we've got plenty. And it's best to start with your own backyard. Start with your local area. Get to know bits of your local area wherever you live. And then extend yourself, because exploring is a huge thing. We want to explore, we want adventure. Yeah, it's huge for us.
It's not that you're necessarily taking the learning activities outside, you're just saying go and explore.
Oh, no. So if they work in the park, or if they work here, then we can take your work. We take books with us when we're out, even exploring further afield. If they want to do all their painting and do all their like essay writing, they can do it outside. We're good with that. We're fine with that. But if they're not feeling it, I'm also not going to force it.
So in terms of like the Charlotte Mason approach, is being outdoors the main thing that she kind of, is that her main message?
I mean, she's got like 6 volumes on this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and say I've read all 6 volumes. No, so she really talks about, there's a lot of great literature, great books, living books, right?
Tombra mentioned that, anyone.
Say that again, please.
Sorry, someone mentioned it in the comments, Tombra. She said living books. Yeah,
living books are a huge part of her philosophy. So what she calls twaddle. So no, we don't want no twaddle. But what we do want is living books.
Sorry, define twaddle. What's twaddle?
Books that have no, hold on. Let me make sure I've got a whole heap of stuff here you don't even want to know. So books, let me define living books, because everyone sometimes has their own understanding or interpretation of what she means by it, but I think that this is a good one. Usually it would have a single author. It's usually based on real events, There's a narrative. It engages emotions. Looks like it would appeal to all ages. This particular book does not need pictures to interpret the text. Conveys ideas rather than just dry facts. Right. And I've noticed, and you can get book lists on all of this, by the way.
That are living books.
That are living books.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what you want to do. You want to fill up your home with these great classical literatures, with these books. Because anytime I've given those types of books to the children, I've seen the difference. They fall in love, and they begin narrating because narration is also a part of it. And the way they're able to remember all the things and articulate all the things they're learning. Yeah, I love it. I love that. And then they want to come back and they make connections between different things we've read. And so reading aloud together as a family, that's also important in the Charlotte Mason. Poetry, music, art appreciation, but short lessons, not too long. Yeah.
Well, if you're spending 4 to 6 hours a day, you can't read.
This is what she,
you know?
Everyone laughs about that. Obviously, look, how I have interpreted it is that you should do the best that you can, right? And keep them, because the benefits are, I mean, you have to just do the research yourself, the benefits. So for me, it's like, because what I've realized is these kids are living it up. They're having a great life, right? Because their well-being, when you look at what it is that's actually happening, music, we play classical music, we play opera. When I looked into like Mozart for brain power, right? So I looked into that and what it does for learning and how the brain has to create new pathways in order to, let's say with Mozart, like be able to receive all of that new information and
create new pathways.
Yes, even just to accept, for the brain to accept what it's hearing, right? So it increases their learning. So you're like, they're good, right? And so I'm realizing that schooling is affecting all of us, because even though the older ones are still home, you know, you can see that it's influencing them, you know, the books we share, the music, the art, it's influencing everyone in the home. And that's what I like. That's,
And so how many hours a day would you say is taken up by actual, like, if like, I don't want to say actual learning, but let's say, you know, like if you were to quantify it, how many hours a day would you say you give to, you know, books and papers and that type of thing?
I would say if we start at 9, then we'll finish at 1. Pushing 2, depending if people wanted to have another nap, another snack, all of this going. So about 1, I'll say 9 to 1. Yeah.
And do you follow the lead of your children?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
that's why I don't hold fast to things. So they might not be feeling it, and if they're not feeling it, we shut down. Then that's the end. We move on to something else, or I introduce something else to see if they're feeling that. Do you get what I mean? Or they look like they just want to sleep. Then if they need to sleep, then they can sleep. That kind of thing. I've got one kid that sometimes need to, you know, sleep quite extra. So but they could be growing, right? So I definitely follow the lead of the children.
So some would say, in terms of that, where does structure come in? Because I guess someone that's coming from a formal schooling background would struggle in terms of like, but what do you mean you just follow the lead of the child? Like, you know, with school, it's very much from 9 till this, you do this, and do you know what I mean? And there's very much a lot of control in that respect over the time. So how does it work when it comes to routine?
Okay, so depending on the method, or the approach to education, because you know there are so many. That's why I was, you know, recommending this. There's so many. I mean, you've got Montessori, you've got Waldorf, you've got unschooling, you've got, I mean, oh my goodness, you've got so many, right? And so I often say that you need to determine why you want to homeschool, because they're the pillars that you need to reinforce, because times may get tough, and those are the things that will anchor you. And once you've determined why you would want to homeschool, you need to look at your family, you need to look at your children, look at all the methods and approaches to education, and figure out which one would work best for you or work best for the children in your care, because no one knows your children better than you. And once you find your method, people tend to think that there's not enough resources or curriculum. Actually, it's
too many.
It's too many. It
Too
can
many.
get so overwhelming. You have to
100%.
to be honest. Yeah, it's too much. First, you think there's nothing there, and then there's a whole universe. And so that will determine whether, if you are a mother that requires more structure, then of course there are particular methods that you'll be drawn to anyway, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
even in our days, we do have morning time, which gives us structure. Even the kids have their own different interests, like crafts and creativity. One's writing a book, and that's what takes us to 1 or 2. So, and I give room for that. That's what, so there is structure. Because they're doing a lot, actually.
Right.
Not in the morning, but when they're, you know, doing their own interest-led things. Yeah, they're doing a lot, and sometimes they can spend hours, and I have to pull them back on the things, you know, like, babe,
Wow.
you know,
It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah,
It's
but
okay.
they're getting really mom,
It's okay.
you know. So yeah.
So Tara actually also mentioned the morning time in the comments. Could you actually elaborate on what morning time is?
Morning time for us, well, we use something called poetry tea time. So we tend to either have like biscuits, or it's not very good for the waistline, biscuits or muffins or cake or something nice, and then we'll bring out really nice cups and saucers and things like that. Just make everything so pretty. And then we will have devotion. So for us, we'll have devotion, we'll have hymns, we'll sing our hymns, then we will do some poetry, then we will do some art appreciation, and in little chunks though, right? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, because if they're enjoying the hymn singing, we're going to sing it again. So
yeah. Like it. And what is the purpose or the benefits of morning time, according to what Charlotte Mason is saying?
Okay, so for me, what I've realized, that for what I can see, that morning time for the children, there's this bonding time that we have, and it's just so sweet, and it's just a lovely time it's a good way to begin the morning, being together, and doing all these things together that are just good, beautiful, true. It just pulls in so much light. And my little girl, she absolutely loves morning time. She says that's school, by the way. So that's her thing, is it's school. And I love that. Anytime I bring out all the books and the basket, it's like you see them like, should we go and get the cutlery? Should we go and get this? And so it's that gathering together, which again, you know, reinforces one of our family values anyway. So.
Right. And so it seems like you actually enjoy this, because this is one of the things that a lot of parents, you know, a lot of my friends, for example, that during the lockdown were like, what do you like about this? And I had to sort of say, that's what you were doing during the lockdown was not homeschooling. No. You know, it wasn't an accurate reflection of the experience of homeschooling, because we're stuck indoors. It's very stressful times, and you know, and many of our we have activities too. We have things that we partake in too that were equally as, you know, cancelled. But for a lot of mums that I speak to, they genuinely can't get their heads around why we would enjoy you know, doing this. And I think one of the things that I've really come to value is the appreciation for time with my children, because like, you know, often like you see the memes all the time, like, oh my gosh, summer holidays is over, quick, take them, like let's just get off these children. And I get it, like it's and especially when you're homeschooling, you see your children in HD. They are constantly there, and so it can get quite intense, but at the same time, I think a lot of people would struggle to kind of get their heads around, like, what do you enjoy? Why do you enjoy this? Like, what is that? So could you explain that a bit more? Wow, that's a big that's a big question. Okay, so we've had 11 pregnancies,
And I've been through a lot having children, right? I've died almost every time having children. Our oldest was born at 27 weeks. He was premature. He was 1 pound 10. We were in hospital for 3.5 months. We were 20 years old, right? So life has hit us hard with so many things. So I choose joy. I take joy. I choose it and I take it. It was a decision I made in ICU, right? I was in intensive care, and I realized that, and obviously every doctor was telling me you should be dead, but I wasn't dead. I was here, and I was here to be able to be with my children and to be able to be with my husband. So I don't take one day for granted. But even prior to that, I was not that mother at the school gates who was grieving the fact that the children had to come home. I was the opposite. I would grieve that they had to go in. I wanted them to stay with me, right? And I enjoyed them because there's layers to your question. Because I understand the mothers that find it difficult to have their children at home. I understand what has happened. You would have to rewind, because you have to have what's his name now? My husband's favorite author, what's his name? Oh, Stephen Covey. He's got a principle that says, begin with the end in mind. And before even, he read the book and he used to talk to me about when we're younger, even in my early 20s, I was of that mindset. I used to think when I was young and we began to have children, that they will grow old, right? And when they get older, we will also be older, and they will be stronger than us as we are getting older and weaker. So we would need to start intentionally parenting now when they're younger, so that as we get older, life will be more pleasant. We would all have a pleasant environment to live in. So it's not a case of I just wanted them home, but they're ripping everything down and I'm just enjoying it. That's not the truth. The truth was we had already begun to lay foundations, set things in place to determine what kind of household we wanted to be. And that's why I enjoyed the children, because they enjoy us and we enjoy them. They respect us and we respect them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I do. So following on from that, because you talked about starting with the end in mind, and you've mentioned quite a few times about your vision. And so you're going somewhere with this. You're not just we're not going with the flow with let's just see, what it brings. There is a vision. So can you tell us a bit more about because a lot of people would struggle but hold on, your children go through primary school, then they go through secondary school, they get good GCSEs, and then they go to sixth form, then they go to university, and they become, and then we're there on the graduation day, we're proud, they make great citizens. That is the vision, no? So could you explain why you would have any other vision than the status quo?
Because of values, and our values are more steeped in the family, and it's steeped in, because our eldest had I think 9 A's. Come on, he's the example of the academic system, mainstream system working, right? He went and studied political science and international relations and all the rest of it. But ultimately, what we found was a lot of graduates don't even use their qualification. That's number one. We started looking at facts. But our vision and our goal was beyond their qualification. The whole child, being their well-being, being God's plan for their life, being the fact that they shouldn't be living just for themselves. One day they're going to be husbands, they're going to be fathers, they're going to be wives, they're going to be mothers, and the school system didn't prepare them for that. And we believe actually that it's the household, the family that prepares them for that. And these are the things, the anchors that anchor societies and communities. These are the things we started believing in, especially in our 30s. And so because we mentor, by the way, so we're mentors. So we mentor a lot of young people, and so we've heard all sorts, and we've seen that a lot of them are ill prepared to deal with life, and we've seen across the spectrum, right, all types of young people, successful ones, well, you name it, but often it's the same things that are causing them so much stress, and it's to do with relationships, it's to do with children, it's to do with the family, it's to do with having it all and all the rest of it. So for us, we began to sow these seeds, have family meetings, talk about our vision, which is that, number one, we serve the children. In time, they will serve us. But if you don't tell children where you're taking them, they won't follow, because we're going nowhere. So we began to tell them where we were going. We began to tell them what we were about. And so we told them, we began to discuss things like sex with them because of the vision. We wanted them to be able to understand God's plan for his people, but practically understand. Because with children, if you tell them what to do and you don't give them information for them to reason with it, for them to determine it for themselves, you've lost. You can't just tell them what to do. You must present the information as you receive the information. We can't look at children and say that they're too young to receive information. So from the age of 7 and 8, we begin to talk about things like sex. We begin to talk about the responsibility of sex. And I remember the day I heard Dr. Tony Evans speak about sex and having it described in this manner, that if you had a house and you had fire, if you were to put it in the fireplace, it would be safe and everyone could find warmth and enjoy it, right? But if you took the fire and left it in the bedroom, it will burn and burn that house down. And sex and passion and lust are like that. They have its place. Everything has its place. And so we began to talk to them about these things, and keeping themselves for their future partners and things like this, and the benefit of that, and even the scientific studies that are done on that, and the statistics that are done on that. So it's not just, we've done a lot of work over the time, good work, chores, giving the children chores. We don't just tell them do this. It was a case of, this family is like the bees and the ants. Everyone works in that colony to make things happen. So daddy's got the things he does, mommy's got the things she does, and everyone else will have the things they do so that the house can function and they can run. We are a team. And so you get buy-in, and they begin to do what they need to do, and you reinforce it with, books, things that build character. It's been a lot of that. What you put in is what you're going to get out.
When you're in being in that position whereby you are homeschooling, you have a lot more time to be able to do this, in a much more concentrated fashion. And do you know what I mean? And you can afford to be extremely consistent with that messaging that you're pushing, because there is so much time that's afforded to you to do that. Perfect. And so I totally see that in our family and with our children. And so, but you know how you talked about, well, we touched on the whole thing about how your eldest, he was a product of, the academic system in terms of like straight A's and so on. What's really interesting though, is that even with fewer hours of academic learning, within a homeschooling structure, and more time outdoors and so on and so forth, statistics show time and time again that homeschooled children actually do brilliantly academically. And in many ways, they actually do better, than children that have gone through mainstream education systems. So that's another thing that I really wanted to kind of communicate, that it's not like you are forfeiting one for the other.
No, absolutely not. I've read those studies, and at the beginning of my first year, 2015, I read a lot and I found out so many things about how they're 3 times ahead, especially in America and Canada. They even had to open, I think Canada, they opened up a university, especially for homeschool children, because they were ahead of their time and they would have to start getting their degree early and all of this. And in America, they're headhunted because they think outside of the box. They're able to generate new ideas. And so, yeah, no, absolutely. I've seen that. I've absolutely seen that. But things have changed for our family. I think that's what I love about homeschooling is it's this colorful pot of just different households, right? That's the difference when you bar it against public school, the public school system, because the public school system is so set and it's just so rigid and boxed up. But then you have this colorful array of all these different families with their own identities and their own ideas and their own loves. And I love the fact that even as homeschooling families, we can't do it all. I mean, there's so many things you see and you're like, I want to do that, I want to have this, I want to have, you know? I'm glad we can't do it all, because I believe that the things that this family can't do, this other family can do. And then this other family deems that as important and is at the top of their priority list. Because I think as those things happen, society and the world will receive the things that it needs for healing, for restoration. I think we begin to actually fill the world with what is required, our differences. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, if we're talking about academics, oh my goodness, no. With homeschooling, they will thrive and they will fly. It's not the children, it's the parents, it's our lack of confidence. It's our lack of confidence within ourselves and our own expectations that we set, and we just feel, oh no, we're doing them a disservice or something's going on. No, I don't subscribe to any of that. I believe that the home is the oldest institution, right? And I believe that even if you took homeschool, if you took school even away from home, it'll still be the place where people learn, where children learn. So no, I'm not of that school of thought at all. But being that I used to be that mum in the public school system that was pushing my children to be achievers, come on, do the best. I soon began to have different values when now we are in homeschooling. We are not barring ourselves against anybody. The kids are not being educated according to grade, nothing. They're staying in their lane. They're going at their own pace, right? And I trust that God knows everything, right? So I trust that in the same manner that I was pregnant with each and every one of them, and I didn't wake up every morning and check if my placenta was working or if my amniotic sac was intact, or I didn't check. I was just looking for food, or I needed a nap, or whatever the case was. I trusted that my body would do what it needed to do. I realized that there was a system I have been put in, which is the public school system. I went through it myself. So that's the mindset. So I'm constantly aware that I'll do the children disservice if I continue to look out from the same lens I've left behind, right? And just trust that the gifts in them, because that's what we're aiming for, the natural talents and the natural gifts that's in them. When the children go to secondary school, they were given options. They were not options. Each secondary school had picked their own options, but they were limited. They were limited. But at home, the children can find their way. And in finding their way, they will be passionate. They will enjoy, right? Their peace, their happiness, and their well-being is what we're shooting for. It's not.
And you know how you talked about them being in their own lane? I heard a quote recently that I love. It's like, when you're in your own lane, there is no traffic.
Perfect.
You're in your lane, you know? And so we've got some questions because we have like 10 minutes left. I can't believe that. Okay, so Brownie Squirrel, that is such a cute Instagram handle. How have you navigated the qualifications system? Will they be sitting public exams, and what sort of breadth of subjects will they have? Not that you always need qualifications to be successful, but I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing. So
okay, so Jacob, so with your GCSEs, we use the IGCSEs, International General Certification of Education.
That's GCSEs that are recognized internationally, by the way.
Yes, internationally. technically you can sit your GCSEs at any time. So even if you want to do it at 12, you actually can. You legally, you only need 5 to 6 GCSEs to be able to attend a college or a sixth form. It is recommended that you include English, maths and science. So that's what Jay did, right? Jay included maths and science, and he used Wolseley Hall online college, Wolseley Hall, Oxford, to do his IGCSEs. We used tutors and exams to find out, to connect the right examination board with the examination center, which his one was in Coventry. So we'll drive him up to Coventry, he'll sit his exams, then we'll come back, right? And then for his A-levels, we use Oxford Learning College and still use Coventry for him to sit his exams. So it's not as complicated as people think. And you can choose as many as you like, by the way.
And you can start as early as you want. You can pace it out. So you can do like 1 this year, 2 the next year.
They can just keep adding the whole thing on and on. And if he wanted to go uni, which we explored, university, he can, but he doesn't want to do that because of where he's going with his whole accounting thing. With all that we did, with all the research we did, it's best that he goes through the apprenticeship.
And we had another question, which is, how do you homeschool 5 children in one day? Or how did you, I mean, I know the eldest is like, he's at uni now, just finished uni, but like how did that work?
So Jay was doing his GCSEs, and I'd have to supervise his timetable and just make sure he was on track with his online tutors and all that entailed. So he'll be getting on with that in our schoolroom, and then I'll be with the 3 younger children, and we'll have morning time, and then in the afternoon we split. Some will do their maths, some will do their French, some will do just independent learning, and then we might come back and do read aloud in the afternoon. But that gave me time to do things with our little girl, the younger one. But yeah, again, it's all just back to, there's a lot of order in our house, in our home, a lot of order. So it's not for us, it's not like that at all.
And I think one of what research shows is that homeschool children tend to be very independent learners as well. And so what that facilitates is the ability to be like, okay, I'm saying facilitate, but it actually enables you to be a facilitator of them actually discovering the learning themselves.
That's absolutely one of the goals, because we want them to leave this house as lifelong learners. That's a gift we want to give them, that learning never stops. Basically, it will continue till they're old, and there's even research on that and how that keeps Alzheimer's and dementia away. Research
100%.
Right.
And we also had another question, which was, how do you teach, which I guess kind of ties in with this question, like different levels of learning, because of course when you're in a classroom, everybody's at the same level as a teacher, so you can, yes, you might differentiate the work, but it's still kind of pitched at the same age. So the question was, how do you teach different levels all at the same time? But I think we might have already touched on that.
I mean, we've done a lot of like one room schoolhouse kind of thing, where a lot of the learning is for all of us, because I think, especially for the younger ones, don't underestimate them. They're able to hang on to things, oh my goodness, like they come out of things that will blow you away, right? So I'm also not of that school of thought that it's all subjects we do that we have to split up. Like history is lovely to do it together, right? And things like geography, let's do that together. And that kind of thing is particular independent learning subjects and topics that they might have to do it separately because they're at different levels, but I'm able to just balance it out. Even if we're having lunch and one has to continue, and I have to do lunch, or Jay has to do lunch, so that I can go and help this one. There's this kind of
you have to be fluid, you have to
that goes on, and that's how it works really, but there are subjects that we do together, and it doesn't hinder the children at all.
And can I just say that in doing the subjects together, there's actually something so valuable with older children teaching the younger children. And research actually shows that when you teach something, it reinforces your learning. So sometimes it actually does them good to be like, how about you just lead that with your sibling, and you kind of give it to them. And so I think it's wonderful when you have, like, one of the things I love about many of the classes that they go to is that because it's a homeschooling environment, you have children of so many different ages. So therefore, they learn from those who are younger than them, and they can also learn from those who are older than them. And that really strengthens their social skills, because it's not you're just mixing with this people your age who are like you, that think like you all the time. So there's actually a lot of benefit to that, There's another question. How did you begin to educate yourselves, equipping you to educate your kids? Okay.
Well, that doesn't stop. I'm not sure. Hold on. I need to really understand that question. How did
I think what she's saying is that, I think what she's saying is because, like, the mindset is that you've got to be a qualified teacher to kind of be able to teach your children. And can I just say that I'm like an anomaly within the homeschooling community that I know of. Like, no one is an ex-teacher amongst my peers of homeschooling mums. They're all just mums. And even when you were teaching, like even when I was teaching, prior to a lesson, oftentimes I'd have to be teaching myself some of the content. I'd have to go over it to familiarize myself before I'm then confident to teach the children. I think it's the same thing. You learn with them. But I mean, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. You learn with them. And I think it's just that notion of really thinking that you are the greatest expert on your child, not the teacher, not the principal, no one is the expert on your child. You are. And I just think if we have to come alongside them and learn, which that's what it has been, even for me, I feel like I'm having like a whole new education. Like right now, I feel I'm more plugged in than I was at school, right? And you're discovering things with them along the way. And that's the beauty of it, because I think these bonds are being tightened and strengthened between the mother and the children. And so, no, I think this, not in our day and age, with all of this, the resources that are just coming out of our ears, I mean, there is no time to like have an excuse that this can not work. It most definitely
information is so easily accessible to you. And teachers, when I was teaching, every teacher preps their lesson. They always prior to their lesson, they take time, they go through the material, they prepare the material and the resources, and they familiarize themselves and get confident with the content to then deliver. It's the same thing, to be honest.
It's the same thing. Depending on what method of an approach of education or philosophy you pick when in homeschooling, you would have to prep some. You can get all kinds of curriculums, right? You can get anything that can best fit you in your strengths and in your weaknesses. Do you know what I mean? Right. So, and
that's one thing, guys. The national curriculum that the UK schools follow is just one curriculum. There are hundreds. Every country has different approaches to the way that they school and they educate, and there are so many different ways. And so again, it's like thinking outside the box and seeing having a bigger vision. Someone asked, can you repeat those two places you mentioned for GCSE and A-level? I think it was GCSE.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't want to like promote that these are the only two places. There's other colleges online, but these are just the two that our second born son used, right? Wolseley, WOLSEY, Wolseley Hall, Oxford. That's what he used for his IGCSEs. And then Oxford Learning College, he used that for his A-levels. And then tutors and exams, they will connect you to the right test center, basically. Once you know like which examination board you're going to use for your IGCSEs or for your A-levels, if you go through them, they'll be able to direct you to determine where you live and a proximity to the most closest test center. So
yeah, so there are options there, and they can absolutely get their qualifications, definitely. And Lenore asked, did you plan all the independent learning?
Yes, we do plan all the independent learning.
Okay.
And that's also, again, based on their interests. So this is not just what I just want them to do, because that's not going to work. That's, again, like school from home. But yeah, that's just based on the things they're already interested in.
Right. Okay.
Right. But then they also take it on. Like now we've got this middle child, Levi. He, like they say with piano, he'll just go and add stuff to it. He will research things, and he will determine that I need to, you know, strengthen this skill set, strengthen that skill, and he pulls and draws the things in himself.
That's where that love of learning comes into it.
That's what yeah, and I need to really emphasize that, because that happens a lot in this house, a lot.
It is amazing. So none of them have ever been like, take me back to school, like,
No.
you know.
No, and I do it on purpose. I actually ask them. I ask them quite often.
Wow. Oh, wow. Amazing. So what I'm going to do, guys, with the books that Liz mentioned, I'm going to, because I'm going to save this video onto the page, and then in the comments underneath, I'm going to provide the authors, the titles and the authors, for those of you who want to read the book. I think it was Wild and Free, and there was another one that you highly recommended. So I'm going to put yeah, that one. So I'm going to put them in the comments for you to go and get. We've actually run out of time now. It's going to cut off. Believe it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And, you know, sharing with us a bit of insight into your world of homeschooling. It has been really enjoyable, and I hope that it's kind of given, you know, people some food for thought as well, and some ideas. And so yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've got some lovely comments. Thank you for a window into your home education journey. It's been so insightful, and your enthusiasm rocks. Really enjoyed this. I learned so much from the conversation. I love facilitation of lifelong learning and letting them discover their passions away from peer pressure and the status quo. So lots of hearts are going out to you as well. So thank you so much.
We got this, mamas. We got this.
Yes, amazing. All right, brilliant. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Thank you, Liz. God bless you. Have a lovely evening. All right, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.